Keep Alaska moving. That's basically the mission statement of the Alaska Department of Transportation. And we're faced with a lot of challenges, not just the weather that we have in Alaska, but we're faced with numerous budget challenges that we're facing due to the reduced oil prices. We'll talk a little bit more about that here in a few minutes. So the results-based alignment initiative is something that we have put in place to help to measure and to report our work. So this is a picture I took last summer, which it does not look like that in Alaska yet. The water is still solid. But that's a picture I took last summer as we had to clean a log jam off of a bridge pier. How do you measure something like that? Well, that's something we really don't know about, but it's interesting what we get to do, what we get to accomplish in the maintenance section in Alaska. It's buried, and Brad, that's not one of your pieces of equipment, so don't worry. We didn't sink it in the river. But we actually got a permit from our fishing game department to get in that river to take that log jam out. So again, that to me just shows the varied nature of everything we have to do, every task that we can undertake in the maintenance department. I had no activity to report that under. We didn't know where to put it. We came up with an idea and put it in our old legacy system. But that's just an idea. Picture a snapshot in time to show you some of the crazy things we get to do. So results-based alignment. It's the RBA initiative that our commissioner put forward to help us to be able to tell our story better as a Department of Transportation. And we're using Agile's suite of products, specifically the maintenance, the pavement, and the fleet management, to be able to tell our story and to gather the data to go forward and tell our story. So this data that we're going to begin to gather is going to help us tell our story. It's going to help drive the investments in our infrastructure, in the maintenance, in the preservation, and also our equipment fleet, so that we can do a better job of managing what our stakeholders have given us and entrusted us to take care of. And yes, we're probably the coolest transportation system in the country, just for the fact that if you guys haven't seen 80 Below, I have. So we've had a very hard time as of late. In Alaska, we have no taxes to speak of. We pay a federal tax. There's no state tax, very little local tax, very little incorporated areas where we would pay any type of tax to support schools. Most of that by state constitution falls to the state of Alaska to take care of. In fact, we actually still, believe it or not, get paid every fall because we are a citizen of the state of Alaska. Every man, woman, and child. This year it figures out we'll get right around $1,600 a piece from a massive oil well fund called the Permanent Fund. So that's some of the earnings off the Permanent Fund by statute comes back to the public. But from 2004 to 2013, about 90% of our state unrestricted general fund revenue was derived from oil royalties. We got about $12 billion in oil royalties in 2010. Dropped a little bit. 2012, we were right back around $10 billion. But as the last 2 years have shown, we only got about $2 billion. So huge, huge budget reductions came as a result of that. So in the maintenance section, we lost right around 29% of our normal funding. So I don't know about you guys, but if I lost 29% of my home budget, I'm not just going to stop going out to eat. I'm going to have to make some huge changes. Well, we've had to make some huge changes because of that. So we've talked about other revenues, but oil is basically king in Alaska. That's what gives us our money to drive state government to fund all the services that are required by Constitution. So with that reduction came a lot of changes and a lot of challenges. So RBA is basically helping us to tell our story. Instead of the old way that we used to get our budget, you got $800,000 last year. Okay, we'll give you another 10% on top of that. You go spend it however you see fit. That was basically our budgeting method as a DOT. Now we have to invest in our results. There's very little historical data that we are able to gather to say this is what we gave our stakeholders for the money that they gave us. It's not that we blew it. It's not that we were bad with money. It's just we had no way to grab that data and use it to show what we were actually doing with that money. Our legacy MMS system is linear. There's very little reporting capability in it. We can't go back and say, on this date, we delivered XYZ to the public. So we've had to make changes in that. So this slide here is basically showing that we as a department, there are a lot of pieces to this puzzle. We are just one piece of that. But the whole point of this is to show our investors and our stakeholders, the public, how we spend their money, that we deliver that movement of goods and people, that we provide access and connectivity, and we access exploration and development of our natural resources. So that's basically the results-based alignment framework. That picture is something I took of a grease board that we were working on in a room when RBA was starting. And it was just a new concept, a new idea. We came up with some core services that we figure that we as a department need to deliver. And that first one is operate our transportation infrastructure. The second one is preserve our transportation infrastructure. The third one is modernize, and the fourth one is operate our marine highway system. Another part of the Alaska DOT is we have a fleet of 11 ferries, covers about 3,500 miles of towns that do not have any other access but besides that ferry or maybe an airport. So we have what's called a marine highway system. 11 vessels, covers like I say that 3,500 miles. So that's another part of our core services. It's very important to the people of those communities. Almost a third of the state is using that marine highway system to move themselves and their goods from point A to point B. So changes. Reduction in money, like I say, 29% to our department. So unless we track our data, we don't know where we are, how we've done, and what we've really delivered for that amount of money. So if we don't know where we are and we don't know what we've actually done, we don't know what really worked and what really didn't. So a big part of this rollout with Agile is being able to gather that data and to analyze it and find out what is really working, what we're doing well at, what we can improve at. And some things that we flat out probably shouldn't be doing. Believe it or not, in Fairbanks, where I'm from, we provide water to the public. There's a lot of dry cabins in Alaska still. So we provide a watering source through DOT that people go and fill up their 5-gallon buckets and take it to their dry cabin so they can have drinking water. Is that a function of DOT? We've tried saying no, but we're still stuck with that water because it's a historical right that people have gotten used to. So we're finding things that we really shouldn't even be doing as a department as a result of working through this process. So what is the RBA? It's basically a service delivery framework. We take those 4 core services, it rolls up to that mission, the mission statement to keep Alaska moving. Below those 4 core services, we have direct services that help us. One of the great things I've learned through this RBA process and that I really want to share is this process, every person in our department should know what role they play in that mission statement. You should be able to find out whether you're a snowplow operator or you're an admin doing paperwork to make sure we get federally reimbursed for projects, you should know what role you play in keeping Alaska moving. That's another side benefit that came out of this that I don't think a lot of us even realized was going to happen. So we deliver every day something to the people of the state of Alaska. I think we're the only department that delivers something every day of the year to the people of Alaska. So how do we go about that? How do we contribute to the outcome? And how do we contribute to how do we understand what we really accomplished? Well, we have to be able to measure. And that takes some work, and that takes some help, because we are not really good at telling our story, like I said before, and we are not really good at gathering data. That's not something that the Department of Transportation is really funded for, or is really staffed for. That's why we got people like Sam to help us out.
Thank you, Dan. Let me get that. Thank you. Now, as Dan is mentioning about data, I'm sure most of the folks here who are sitting here in this room, you're familiar with what we do with the systems, what we do with MMS in general, and then how we are integrating all these systems. So my plan or my presentation moving forward here is not going to be going into detail of what each one of those systems are doing, or even what MMS in general is doing. But I'm going to be presenting to you how we are supporting RBA, the results-based alignment. Let me ask this: how many of you is anyone here doing scenario-based analysis or LOS-based analysis in MMS? I see one raise of hand there. In PMS, anyone is doing optimization or any kind of analysis with the PMS? Okay. So now, why I'm asking this question is, we have heard about data. We collect data for asset inventory. We spend millions of dollars collecting data. We have data in the system. We have planning data in the system. We do work orders. We do all this, but are we tracking it? Are we tracking it, evaluating it, refining it? I think that's where we stand supporting this initiative. Now, as I said, if I'm going into details what we are doing with Alaska, we are doing maintenance management, MMS. We are doing EMS, equipment management, or fleet, for those folks who are understanding fleet. And then we're also doing PMS. Now what you see here is all these systems are talking to each other, not only to each other, but we also do integration with external systems. So external systems, you can see that we also do integration with the financial, HR, systems like Pontus, the bridge management, which Alaska is using. Again, we are still standing at the point where we are collecting data. We are doing all sorts of things, managing the data. But are we analyzing it? Are we optimizing it? Are we evaluating it to move, to refine the process? So let's look into each of those. I'm going to go into one of each systems at the very high level. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into MMS, take each of the phases in MMS, and then see how we are going to be implementing that. Okay. So let's look at EMS. Again, I see Brad is here, Ghulam is here. They should be coming here and talking about it. But I'm just going to give you an overview of what we are doing with fleet or EMS. We have data which we are capturing, in this case, inventory data. We have all the equipment inventory related data. We're storing that. MMS folks are using that data, right? We also have direct, indirect interfaces to and from EMS. We do that. Finally, we are using this to integrate with MMS. And the way we are using this is to have the billing, have the charging enabled from EMS into MMS, or vice versa. Now, we'll go into PMS a little bit. I'm having a hard time with this. Same thing here, PMS, again, you have seen this, you have implemented this before. PMS, just a bit of more sophisticated system. We have optimization analysis. We take an input in terms of inventory and condition data, and then we analyze that using the condition indices. And from there, we optimize it to give out a plan, right? You have seen this before. Now, same thing once again, we are integrating PMS with MMS, where PMS is going to give out a plan, MMS is going to work on that using work order functionality. Now let's look at one of the integration, the other systems integration, right? We have seen EMS, PMS, and then there is other systems. In this case, the example I'm presenting to you is the AVL data. I know Idaho is doing it. I know now Alaska is doing it. So this is kind of a new integration that we are doing, especially with Alaska. We are doing an API integration, which means taking the data directly from the sensors on a vehicle, putting that onto a work order data, right? Very cool integration where you take the meter readings from the vehicle itself, get the data into MMS datacards. We are not fully implementing it at this point. We are just taking baby steps. We have meter readings, but down the lane, our to-be is to get those meter readings directly into fleet. So it's going to be there one day. So we have seen what these systems are. Now, I'm going to go deep dive into MMS. Again, as I said, I'm not going to be talking about day cards or time or usage or whatnot, but I'm going to be presenting the phases, and Dan is going to help me out. We're going to do this together. We're going to show where we are today, and we're going to be showing where we want to be with MMS, and how MMS, EMS, PMS are helping out to reach that RBA initiative. Okay, Dan, you ready?
Sure.
So let's start off with planning. So I'm going to ask Dan to talk a little bit about where we are.
So for us in the past, like I've discussed, planning meant tell me how much money I've got, I'll go spend it all. That's really not a great way to do business, is it? So going forward, our hope is that this planning phase of the MMS system will allow us to put together work plans, will allow us to develop our work activity standards. How long does it take to repair 50 feet of guardrail? How long does it take us to plow our whole entire road system? So we have to set those work activity standards up. We have to also work on that list of activities. How did we come up with an idea of what we were going to call that pier cleaning when we were cleaning out the debris from spring runoff at that bridge? We have to get a complete list of activities to be able to do our work plan for either seasons or even for the whole year, if we can plan it out that far.
Now, again, planning, we have been doing that for many years. We are using various kinds of tools for planning. But here is where we want to be. We don't just want to plan it by activity. We want to plan by results. So let's say you have LOS at B this year. We really don't want to be at B. Maybe we just wanted to spend a little bit less money. C is okay. Maybe there is another activity or another asset where we want to move from C to B or C to A. So the trade-off and the analysis is where we want to be. And that also goes back into RBA. So looking at the long-term goals, we want to customize those activity standards, not just at the state level, but the county or the station levels. We want to do plans which are LOS-based plans. So that's going to help us in performing the work orders or performing work better. Now, we're going to look at the next one, which is asset inventory and inspections.
So asset inventory and their condition is very critical to your plan. You have to know what you actually have to maintain and what condition that is in at the time. So how much work are you going to need to put in that? How much resources are you going to need? And by resources, I mean probably money. Are you going to need to throw at that asset in order to bring it to an acceptable level of service that your customers are demanding? Are you putting too much into a certain resource? Are you putting too little? Without that data or without that inventory and without an actual survey of what that condition is, you really don't know. You're going out there blind. You're making assumptions that you really can't support with your data. So we have to get that data into the system. Right now, we are just dipping our toes into the asset management world in Alaska. We're just getting started. So that's part of the great thing about coming here and listening to other people's stories. We're taking stuff back that we can use in implementing our program as well.
As Dan is mentioning, there is limited inventory data right now for the state of Alaska. But what we are implementing, I'm going to talk a little bit, we are implementing the collector, SD collector. As part of that, we're going to be taking it out to do more inventory collection. However, Alaska has this very robust QA/QC inspection functionalities or procedures in place. So they have been doing this for years. However, it's an open-ended process, which means you're spending money on collecting data for LOS values. You're using that to do some kind of analysis, but very little is actually putting back into the process, which means you're not re-evaluating your annual plans. You're not doing a scenario analysis. So that's where we want to go. Right now, it has a limited inventory. That's one of the factors, definitely. We want to improve that. So we're going to move into inspections, taking inspections, combine both together and use it to refine our plans. Now, if you're looking at this slide, we are talking about integrating PMS and MMS. So again, remember the slide I was showing where all the systems are talking to each other. We are getting a PMS plan into MMS. We are creating work orders out of it. And once the work orders are completed, we are sending the data back to PMS. So one more example of how we are integrating it. I'm also going to be talking about the desired LOS plan. So for the desired LOS plan, if you are aware of, if you're doing it already, the three basic parameters, you got to have inventory data, you got to have the LOS conditions, and you also have to have how much you spent, your work history or your cost history. So those three parameters are key right now. We started collecting inventory data, that's going to be there. The condition data, as I said, it's already robust, we have all that. The work history is another missing piece. So with the new MMS implementation, maybe 3 years, looking at 3 years or 5 years down the lane, we should have good quantifiable data to use that back into LOS process. I think the next phase is going to be, SD collector, I talked about this. This is, we upgraded to 7.2, so Alaska is supposed to be one of the first states to go live with SD collector, but we have some delay issues. We're going to be doing it, but still, we're going to be one of the first states going live with SD collector. The next one is scheduling work itself. Dan?
So that's going to be a part of our transportation leader's job, is to schedule work. We're going to get these work requests that can come in from our bridge system. We're going to get work requests that come in from pavement management system, and we're going to be able to go out and schedule our work besides our normal routine work that we need to go take care of. So that's an absolutely great part of this system. Is we're going to be able to plan it, we're going to be able to record it, and then we're going to be able to go back and analyze that data that we're going to be gathering. Like Sam said, we're not expecting miracles for the next 3 to 5 years, but after that we should be getting a pretty good idea, pretty good handle on where we're at with our maintenance activities and how much we're actually expending and how much we're putting into our assets.
I'm going to point out the integration between the Pontus and MMS once again. Again, going with the theme of integration. Right now what's happening is if there is a recommendation from the bridge team, they are going to be sending out a report or a piece of paper to MMS. With the integration, what's happening is everything is happening seamlessly between Pontus and MMS. So the work recommendations are coming in from BRM or Pontus. They're going to come back in, or they're going to come into MMS. MMS folks are going to be working using work orders, sending back to Pontus how much they have spent. Now, again, work orders, everyone has been doing work orders even before AgileAssets, even before MMS. But the way we are integrating this, the way we are sending back data and the way we are using it is what's different here. And that's what we are trying to do with Alaska as well. The next phase is performing.
So it makes sense, right? We plan it, we schedule it, somebody goes and executes that work order. We go back, we report it. Again, that's the integration that we're grabbing our labor from our HRM program. We're grabbing material costs from our financial program, equipment costs from our EMS program. That's all being gathered on one work report, and we're able to save that and use that information at a later date. We'll also use that to make our work activity standards. On this day, we fixed 50 feet of guardrail, it took this many people, it took this much equipment, and this is what it costs. So we'll have that historical data to go back to.
So the missing piece, we have labor, equipment, and material coming in, but obviously money is important too. So let me ask this question. Any agency here who is going through that process of implementing financial or HR systems right now, the ERP implementation? I'm guessing you already have them, or some form or other implementation already you have. So with Alaska, Alaska is doing an implementation with Advantage, CGI Advantage. So their financial systems are in place, their HR systems are in place, and we are, again, integrating to those systems. So we're getting the chart of accounts or the program. Again, you have been doing this all the time, but what we are, this is new for Alaska. We're integrating with those systems. Earlier, It was indirect or integration, or it's going to be a paper trail integration. But right now, we are using it not only to get chart of account details, but also to send what was costing maintenance to do those work orders. So sending back, getting the data and sending back the costs is also happening. The next slide is a detail of task work orders or task orders. I'm not going to go into detail. We have seen this before, I guess, but what I'm like to present here is the detail at the very bottom. So we have a top-down approach, which we do in MMS. We have a program at the very top. We have work orders, activities, and then we have labor, equipment, and materials. So this was one piece that is missing. Now what's happening with this integration is all the costs, individual costs that are incurring using those work orders are sent back to financial systems. So the reporting is easier right now, and even pay, I mean, as important or as simple as paying someone is also simplified with this approach. The next slide is talking about the work manager. Mobile work manager, I'm not sure how many of you are using. It's another new upgrade that we are doing. Mobile work manager is going to be implemented with 7.2 at Alaska to support work orders functionality. I mean, I was talking to Dan this morning. It seems that there are 180 airports. 180?
249. 249.
249. It's not 180. 249 airports that the DOT is supposed to be maintaining, and most of these don't even have any sorts of connection to the mainland, if you will. So all the work that's happening there is locally there. They don't have any internet connectivity. Mobile apps like this work manager is going to be key to perform any kind of work in those disconnected places. The next one, we have seen performing work. Now let's look into reporting. Dan?
So again, reporting those activities and reporting the costs accurately are critical. Getting good data. Bad data is pretty much worthless. You might as well have none. So getting good data is critical to moving forward with our results-based alignment program. We can provide our leadership team as well as our stakeholders with information as to what we've actually done with the funds that we've been given. So we can report in MMS, we're going to be able to report down to the road segment level. We can also report down to district or station level. We can roll reports back up to a statewide level if we want to get an overall umbrella of how we're doing as a state, or if we want to figure out how we're doing in Barrow, which is the northernmost city in the whole United States. Then you can break that down to say, okay, I need this much more. I need 40% more to be able to do this kind of work in a remote location as I do in my main hub cities that we have in Alaska. So ease of retrieving the data, we want to go back and get that really easy with reports. I know from dealing with having to go ask an analyst programmer to run a report for me to actually playing in the Agile system is a huge upgrade, because I can go in with the drop-down menu, check some boxes, and I can customize a report for basically anything we want to measure in our system. So it seems to be a very huge leap and a big upgrade in my mind for being able to manage our assets.
We're also doing some reports. I mean, I'm sure you understand how tedious and difficult it is to do some of the disaster-related reports for FEMA. So that's something that we are developing right now as we speak. Reporting is another key phase. I mean, time and again, if I'm going back to this slide here, time and again you're seeing these phases which are integrating into one another. I mean, any of these are not standalone phases. They have to be supporting, integrating with each other. Reporting is one of those last important phases where we are evaluating the data. That is a powerful tool for both the consumers, who are the end users, as always the investors as well. So you got a legislature coming in, and you have someone from higher ups, they're coming in and they're asking a report. Someone is asking from the citizens, they are asking what happened to a pothole which have asked to be repaired. So these reports, it could be consumers or it could be investors. Very important tool for us to go back to them and then give an answer to them. So the last phase in our discussion is going to be evaluating. So we're done with reports. This is an example of a report.
Right, so the reporting basically that we're going to get out of the system is a QA/QC report. Most all of those measures I talked about at the beginning, the direct services, are going to come out of that QA/QC report that we're going to be able to roll up and share with our investors. I know Brad and I right now, it's legislative season in Alaska. A lot of our days now are spent asking inquiries. What would happen if this? What would happen if that? Tell me how much money you spent here. We spend a lot of our time, so these kind of reports are going to be very critical to us going forward.
So the last phase is evaluating. So we are completing the loop here. Again, it's not an open-ended process we're talking about. We're talking about an integrated solution where the phases are talking to each other. When we are trying to evaluate, imagine if we are looking at that one LOS value saying that this is how much we spent, this is where we are, and this is where we are going. Imagine the perception of the consumers. Imagine the perception of the public who are using these roads. If they feel that their tax dollars that they are giving us as DOT agencies, if they perceive that, they feel there is a change, I think we have seen that the change is real. So going back to Dan's slide at the very beginning, if we are not tracking data, we don't know where we are. If we don't know where we are, we don't know if the changes are successful. Right? So we want to see that success. We want to see that change. So if we are evaluating, we need to do what if. So we need to do what if scenario analysis. That's where we are heading. We are doing work orders all these years. We've been patching potholes. We've been repairing guardrails. But we need to, now in the crisis that we are in, with lesser and lesser dollars that are coming in for maintenance, we need to see how we are doing that shift. And that's where the scenario analysis is going to come in. It's going to take the conditions of assets. It's going to take the asset inventory. It's going to take how much we spent in the previous year. Take that all, do an analysis, put back into the plan which we are doing in the following year. So scenario analysis, current QA/QC, funding, we can tell how much we need the next year to the stakeholders. So I think that's wrapping up what RBA is and how AgileAssets is supporting RBA initiative in the state of Alaska.